I'm not able to hear audio.
Hi, we are just waiting for everyone to join in. Let's wait for a minute and then we can begin if everyone's okay with it.
ஒரு வெபினார்ல இருக்கா நான்
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I just wanted to take a tech check. Can we start now, DP? Yes, we are good to go. Okay. So, welcome everyone. I do not know if this is your first webinar that you are attending with Kelp, or if you've attended previous ILA and Kelp collaborative webinars. But here we usually do informative sessions on different topics of law. So today we are, before I start the session, I would like to begin with an understanding of who we are. So this is organized in collaboration with the Indian Lawyers Association, ILA, and Kelp, which is formally also known as Kelp HR. We are a consultancy in PoSH and DI, more on that later. My name is Meenakshi, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. And the Indian Lawyers Association is a voluntary professional organization dedicated to serving legal professionals of India. Their mission is to shape the future of the legal profession across the India, providing a platform for growth, learning, and advocacy. Kelp has been established in 2013. It is a forward-thinking organization committed to transforming workplaces into safe, happy, and inclusive environments. Kelp has been a pioneer in simplifying the legal complexities of Prevention of Sexual Harassment (PoSH) Act at the workplace, and also aims to demystify the crucial topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is also known as DEI in popular uh, in colloquial terms. And today we are going to talk about redressal without retaliation at the workplace. And we believe that retaliation can be a major hindrance to the justice system at large. Often it poses a very big problem than the act of the sexual harassment itself sometimes. Retaliation acts as a deterrent for individuals to file sexual harassment cases and also complicates the pursuit of fair redressal without hostility for all the parties involved in the workplace. So now retaliation can impact everyone, not just complainants. It can impact witnesses and respondents. It can occur before or after a complaint is filed with power tactics or fear mongering used to prevent individuals from coming forward. Or it can be coming across as a vengeance or like some kind of putting down of someone. So it can happen in various formats and to various parties. And often against complainants, there is a lot of retaliation because they came forward and stood up against a perpetrator or somebody that they were not comfortable with at workplace, and their dignity has been hindered. Tactics such as shaming them or victim blaming them are often employed by uh, sometimes respondents or sometimes other members of the company to intimidate or silence victims from coming forward. Victims or survivors, whatever language that uh, people are okay with. Witnesses face threats for example, supporting the complainant, and they fear retaliation often, and they are discouraged from coming forward as witnesses. Sometimes post a witness testimony, they are threatened, and respondents also face retaliations in form of lack of rehabilitation. Sometimes there is a lot of cancel culture with which people operate. So maybe when the case is brought forward, the respondent is automatically assumed to be the uh, guilty person without the trial, and often there are such retaliations that respondents also face. It is crucial for everyone to understand that there are systems in place that aim to provide a fair trial for all, and any interventions that involve such retaliations break the ability to conduct the fair, hindrance-free trial. And addressing and mitigating retaliation is also essential for ensuring a transitional and transformative justice and maintaining a healthy workplace environment. So, a little bit about our panelists. Aileen and Vasundhara are here with us. They're both very esteemed, and I'm really excited to introduce them today. So, Aileen is a practicing member of the Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa with nearly 17 years of active involvement in litigation, primarily focusing on matrimonial and family law. Aileen is renowned for her ability to blend social activism with justice advocacy. She's also a nominated legal aid panel lawyer on the Maharashtra State Human Rights Commission and National Council member for Equitable Parenting Council under the Women Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Aileen has conducted numerous law-related sessions for judicial officers, the Department of Women and Child Development, police departments, the ISRO, and various other government functionaries, corporate organizations, and NGOs. Her dedication to ensuring compliance with PoSH Act, Juvenile Justice Act, and POXO Act has earned her multiple awards recognizing her legal interventions, community empowerment programs, and legal education initiatives. We're really proud to introduce Aileen as one of our panel members today. And Vasundhara is with us. Vasundhara is a lawyer and she's passionate about advocating for safe workplaces for women and achieving gender justice. She holds a LLB from GLC Mumbai. Uh, for nearly a decade, her work has focused on access to justice and rights-based litigation. She assisted one of the India's leading women rights lawyers, Advocate Veena Gowda, and in providing legal support to survivors of domestic violence. This work involved engaging with local police and public healthcare system on behalf of the clients. She has also assisted Advocate Gowda with PoSH inquiries and trainings. Vasundhara has worked with international non-profits such as New York Legal Assistance Group and International Transport Workers Federation. With NILAG, she assisted her supervising attorneys with civil litigation related to immigration and family law for low-income New Yorkers. For ITF, she conducted research on how violence impacts women's performance at the workplace, specifically with Maharashtra State Transport Union's women bus drivers and conductors. Building on this diverse experience since 2020, Vasundhara has served as an external member on IC internal committees inquiring into complaints of sexual harassment, conducting trainings, drafting PoSH policies, and assisting with compliance requirements such as quarterly meetings and annual report submissions. She has conducted IC trainings, gender sensitization, and employee awareness trainings in our corporate settings, warehouses, and even for workers on construction sites. A little bit about myself. My name is Meenakshi, and I will be your moderator for this session. Smita unfortunately could not make it to the session this time. I am a lawyer and subject matter expert on the prevention of sexual harassment. I have been associated with Kelp for over 2 years, gaining extensive experience in PoSH and somewhat explored training, case handling, content development, and I'm also their lawyer. Additionally, I have explored criminal litigation and the social sector and the development sector. I've worked at grassroots levels to understand the social legal systems and blend the legal and development sectors in a research and practical sense. We are really thrilled to have such experts with us today. Our discussion will delve into key aspects of legal practice and workplace safety, focusing on POSH, addressing retaliation, and fostering inclusive environments. Thank you all for joining us today. It means a lot. It's a very technical topic. So please feel free to ask any doubts that you may have, and we will try to address as many questions as possible towards the end of the session. And feel free to use the chat box to provide any thoughts and comments and questions that you may have. With that being said, I think we can start with our today's discussion. I'll also hand over the floor to Aileen and Vasundhara for any initial thoughts, and then we can dwell into deeper questions on the topic. Over to you, Aileen. Vasundhara, any of you can pick it up.
Aileen, I'll let you go first.
Thank you, Meenakshi, for that very generous introduction. When we talk about retaliation in cases of sexual harassment at workplace, it is very important for us to understand that the nature of sexual harassment is something that, is very difficult very often for the complainant to explain. And there are a lot of other emotional aspects attached to it. And retaliation very often happens at various levels, and it in my experience has been an hindrance for women to reach out or find redressal for complaints. There have been a lot of studies, I agree, but personally I feel that retaliation, is one aspect that needs to be handled in a more comprehensive manner to increase reporting of cases of sexual harassment, and to ensure that uh, the law is promoted in its intent and spirit. And I look forward to this session on, understanding the nitty-gritties of retaliation, and how maybe we can look at various aspects of handling inquiries and creating safe spaces for all the parties concerned.
Right. Thank you so much for that insight. I would like to actually ask the first question to Vasundhara directly. That is retaliation. What does the law say about retaliation? Is it something that is covered under the POSH Act? And how does the anti-sexual harassment laws look at retaliation at large? So over to you, Vasundhara, on that.
Thanks, Meenakshi. I think adding to what Aileen said, retaliation is such a critical aspect of the POSH law that we should be exploring. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation today, because it is such a big hindrance for so many parties. We'll look at all of these aspects. But to start off, there is the term retaliation is not really specifically covered in any law, but whenever we have looked at POSH cases, we do know about hostile work environment. I think any POSH practitioner understands that term. So often we see that retaliation has been covered in other terms, like hostile work environment, like saying interference with duties. So as you know, the language of the POSH Act came from the Vishakha guidelines, and the language of the Vishakha guidelines came from CEDAW. So which is the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination, against women. So when we look at the language, there is often a mention of any kind of disadvantage in the employment. There's language like that which is used. So what is this disadvantage that is being referred to? That is retaliatory behavior. Because one is the sexual harassment incident itself, and then there is the sort of backlash for reporting it or for saying, I don't want to engage in this kind of behavior with you. So wherever it comes, there is a complainant focus here. Aileen mentioned that, it can affect all parties. But the law does have that focus on, the complainant facing retaliation, not really so much the respondent or witnesses or any other parties. And there is also the Sunita Thawani judgment, which came out in which a PIL was filed to make it a separate offense. But the Supreme Court said we can't really do that. That is not our, it's not in our power to do that, to make a separate offense of this kind. So there have been some case laws still which address retaliation. So that's all there is. There is no specific wording that says retaliation, but there has been other language which talks about it specific to complainants.
Right. I think it is much needed to also establish it legally, because there is a lot of confusion about the law sometimes. So now, because we understand such thoroughly from you on how retaliation is maybe addressed in law, I would like to ask further on, why does it happen? How does retaliation cause an obstruction? Like I said before, that there is an obstruction to redressal. So how does retaliation cause that kind of obstruction? Aileen, if you would like to answer that.
Yes. Retaliation generally happens in cases where there is an element of power, and when there is someone who is a person who is senior in leadership. Very often we see organizations, they follow the PoSH Act only for compliance. The intention or the intent of the organization does not reflect in their action. And very often we see victims are reluctant to report because they fear that, there will be adverse action taken against them. And because of the intent of the organization not being clear to make it a safe place, very often victims are scared, they are worried, they are not really inclined to report because they feel that reporting a case may affect their career, bring a affect their name, and also defame them at a larger extent. Generally, retaliation occurs when a person is not treated favorably, and it can also happen in cases when someone wants to come in as a witness. That person may also face retaliation because the complainant's complaint is not then comprehended further. uh, there are various forms of retaliation, if I may continue with that.
Yes, please continue. Yes.
So very often we have seen cases where women have got fired from their job. There was this famous case wherein this lady was, there was a defamation case filed against her. There was a case of a judge who was transferred from that job. So there are all of these aspects are to an extent retaliation for having complained. There is isolation, then there is exclusion from the organization, promotions are withheld. There was a case that happened at the university where a lady teacher was not given lectures, sufficient lecture. She was not allowed to interact with the children because they thought she would be a bad influence because she raised a complaint. Because of all of this, somewhere women lack confidence, or they feel that they may not be supported if they initiate an inquiry or make a formal complaint. And retaliation to that extent can deter investigation, can deter the first instance of registration of a complaint. It may deter witnesses from coming in, and maybe the lady may not even want to carry on with the complaint, and she might just agree for conciliation just to avoid the consequences of retaliation.
Yeah. Very yeah. I mean, I was also thinking like that was the MJ Akbar case, I'm guessing, which was brought forward. So it is very insightful, like we still think that, oh, there is an act and there are all these, right after a PoSH training, we've often seen like, these jokes being spread about the training that, oh, now I won't give you a handshake, you'll put PoSH on me. Like you can see how it is taken in jest so much, right? And there are reels being made that after PoSH training, the men in the company just roaming around like, oh my God, don't touch me types. So there is a lot of like,
Just
it's interesting how after a training people react like this. That when somebody files the complaint, they're like, oh, you're too radical, or like, that is also like a very important viewpoint. Vasundhara, please go ahead.
So just recently, building on this, Meenakshi, there was a case in which a complainant told us that the whole team was making fun of, there were multiple complainants in a prior case. So those 2, 3 women were being made fun of by the rest of the team, saying, oh, these women got together and filed a PoSH complaint. And, the kind of suffering that the respondent had because of that kind of mockery was going on. And that prevented a future complainant from raising her voice. So she said, oh, I don't want to be made fun of like this. I don't want to be mocked like this. So definitely this jest is such a big aspect of retaliation that nobody sees. We often think retaliation is something more serious. It's more dire. It could even be something as subtle and what we consider light, as making fun of the law. I think
Right.
Madhuri has raised her hand. I'll let you continue, Meenakshi.
Yeah. Madhi will address the questions towards the end if possible. But like I will be able to take up the question in like maybe 5-10 minutes if that's okay for you.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted to not pain your hand by keeping it up for so long. And yeah, when we were also talking about jest, I remembered one more thing, that whenever a person raises a PoSH complaint, the first thing people talk about is, oh, the other person's career is at stake. We get it that the other person's career is at stake, but there is also a dignity of the person who is being impacted. And people often fail to see that. Like I've seen this even in a university, that like a PoSH case was raised. It was a first year student who raised a complaint against a fifth year student here. So now I don't know how much if it would be PoSH because it's both of them being students, but one of them was also like a first year, and there is a power dynamic involved in universities usually, like when it's first and fifth year. And everybody talked about what a brilliant student he was. But nobody talked about what impact it must have been for the first year student to have gone through something in the initial experiences of her law school, right? So that is also like a mindset that people come with, that, oh, you ruined somebody's life by filing a complaint. And to just like state on that PoSH Act is very rehabilitative in nature. So if you are filing a complaint, it doesn't mean that someone's life is ruined. They just have to reflect on their behaviors and figure out a way to maybe become better individuals as they go. And it is not to say that one person, if they have had a case on them, their life is ruined, but it is also to reflect on like how to behave in workplace. And sometimes respondents also come and say, she's trying to ruin my life. Then you should have thought about it before acting that way, right? So it's very interesting how it often is villainizing, like it is their actions which is bringing the repercussions and consequences, is not what people think. They directly say that the complainant is the one who is ruining our lives, and she is just the one who is dealing with some problem that has been caused by the respondent, which is not seen. That being said, I think we can go on and on on this, so I don't want to take up all the space in this. And I would like to come to the space of what support systems are in place for complainants, witnesses, and even respondents to feel safe during the process. If you can elaborate with some examples, Vasundhara.
Oh, sure. I was waiting for Aileen maybe to shed light on this. So,
Yeah. If Eileen wants to go ahead, please. I think I might miss the
Vasundhara, you can
sequence.
start. I will take it later.
Yeah.
So I think the classic sort of measures that have been put in place in the PoSH Act are, of course, the interim relief that we give. So it could include, I think the most common one these days, post-pandemic, has become work from home, so that there is no interaction between the parties from the get-go, right from the time the complaint comes. But even something more drastic can be done, like, changing the location of either of the parties if there are multiple branches in the organization, or even, I think, changing the reporting structure so that there is no sort of retaliation in the form of giving poor performance reviews while the inquiry is still ongoing. So interim reliefs are the most, I think, common way of protecting against retaliation, but that is only again for the complainant. If we think of the respondent, and I wanted to shed light on this, one of the cases again that I recently handled had a complainant who was continuing to talk about the PoSH case that was ongoing with different team members. And they were both at the same sort of designation. So it wasn't like there was a senior junior relationship. So he felt that uh, he came to the IC saying that you've told me I can't talk about this, but how is it that she's going about talking about it? So when that case happened also, we reiterated the section on confidentiality to the complainant that, look, there is a fine in place for it under the rules. So please don't violate this, provision, and there will be consequences for violating confidentiality. So there could be other sort of provisions also which can be used in a different manner, like in a different way. Even if again they don't really say interim reliefs, it could be still offering some protection to the parties. Eileen, any thoughts? Yes, Amit, we did raise the penalty in that case for breach of confidentiality, and it was deducted from her salary in installments. That's what was done. Just there was a question on chat, so I figured I'll answer that. Eileen, please go for it.
So, to add on to what you said, yes, interim measures are put in place to handle, certain aspects of fear that the complainant would have. But in addition to that, in a recent case where an inquiry was being conducted, it was a university setup, and there was a complaint, against two students again, and there in the classroom, the case was being discussed. So this was brought to the information to the knowledge of the internal committee, and then specifically certain directions had to be given, saying that there is a confidentiality agreement in place, there is privacy to be maintained, and publicly the facts of the case cannot be discussed because it can amount to various other complications in the matter, and also there is an indirect influence on the witnesses and other people. So there have been instances where the internal committee has been, informed of a certain breach of privacy that has happened. There has been a penalty imposed, agree. But in addition to that, the internal committee has also ensured that the people who have been named as, witnesses, they are also informed of the measures that can be taken in case they face any kind of retaliation. Now, what is a immediate support system that is provided? One is the change of location, not reporting to that person. But in one case where it was a banking sector, there we saw that when this lady made a complaint, in addition to her complaint, there were seven other complaints that came in. And then the retaliation that happened at each of these offices was different. And somebody contacted the parents of this complainant to tell her to withdraw her complaint. Otherwise, her career would be at stake. Now, when such instances of retaliation come in, the immediate support system that can be provided, I think, is some mental health, help that can be provided to the victim or to the complainant to address the issue. And in addition to that, certain guidelines that the respondent is should be directed not to connect with, the family of the complainant, to ensure that she is able to proceed with this complaint without any fear or any coercion. So in one particular internal inquiry, the internal committee informed the employer of this, the the backlash that was happening and the efforts that were being made by the respondent to contact the family, and subsequently certain measures were put in place. So the support system would depend on the nature of the retaliation. If the retaliation happens on the spot, it happens within the sphere of the internal committee, then action can be taken to make things, in order. But if it happens through indirect means, then various other ways, have to be worked out. There was another case where a criminal complaint came to be filed, and then they asked for the bail to be rejected, the bail to be recalled, because the respondent was trying to intimidate the complainant and the witnesses. So, at the organization level, I think it is very important for the organization to conduct trainings and to reinforce the aspect of creating a safe workplace for the employees, so that they feel it is important, for us to bring out such instances that are there. In one organization, after a inquiry and after the orientation program, there was a standard rule that everybody talked about कि अभी औरतों को नहीं रखना है. Now we don't need women in our office because there is no fear of an internal inquiry coming in then. So in such a place, what the organization did was they started a center where a woman could breastfeed her child, and they tried to make the workspace more accessible to women at various stages in their life. And this gave a message to the employees that women are an integral part of our workplace, and we cannot have a workspace without women. So I think various policies that organizations bring in to ensure that women are treated with dignity and have a safe workplace play a very important role in addressing issues of sexual harassment.
Right. Actually, one thing also that was staying with me was that like work from home, right? So even in work from home as an interim relief, sometimes people face retaliation. Like they're not given enough work, or like, they are asked to come on too many meetings and odd hours because they're working from home, or they're given too much work because no one can see the person. So they do face such situations where, like, oh, but you are signed in for logged in for 9 hours, so do like 12 hours worth of work right now because we can't see you. So justify everything that you are doing. So all of these kind of retaliations also kind of happen when work from home is given. Very passive aggressive behaviors that people go through. Um, it's interesting to see, like, especially in criminal cases, the process is way more defined in the criminal procedure code. But when you see POSH Act is a civil law, and the power between the hands of the IC is also limited to the workplace. So it is also the duty of all the employees to take care of anti-retaliation and make sure that there is a safe workplace for people, because there is only limited things that a IC can do. Definitely they can do a lot of things, but IC is also limited in the power that it owns in handling such situations. So it's also employees and people and good standing citizens that we all are corporate citizens, and we need to focus on it as a thing to create that safe space ourselves also. And somewhere the employers also need to ensure that they are doing well. So which brings me to my next question, that can employees report the instances of retaliation, and can they do it anonymously? How can that be possible? Because as POSH, complaints cannot be taken anonymously. But how do we talk about remaining anonymous? And can uh, people, like employees who are seeing such behaviors take place in workplace, can they do some kind of um complaint to the IC, like for such retaliations? Was the question clear?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I'm gonna start.
So, anonymous complaints, do not really help the purpose, especially when we are talking about the nature of retaliation that is there and the impact of retaliation. So personally, I believe that yes, people can come and report. There have been instances where people have reported to the employer and that there is an internal inquiry going on. However, these are things that are happening at the workspace, and then the employer brought it to the notice of the internal committee. So I personally believe that anonymous complaints do not help the purpose, and uh, reporting anonymously may not be should not be the norm. However, the instances of retaliation and the impact of that should be conveyed to the employer, and then it would be conveyed to the internal committee, because the internal committee is handling a particular case and has information about the nitty-gritties or the technical aspects, has statements before it, and the impact is visible, when a person comes to testify to that effect. So yes, I believe that retaliation should be reported, and it should not be reported anonymously. But
Even I agree with Eileen. So one is whatever I've seen in cases of PoSH, whenever retaliation is taking place, the parties come up immediately strongly about it and they say that, I'm facing this, can you do something about it? Even witnesses, for example, if they've had any sort of, not nice interaction with any of the parties, they immediately come to any IC member singly, not in the inquiry meeting. They come singly approach and say, I had this experience. And is it because of the inquiry? I didn't mean to rub anybody off wrong. So that's the experience I've had. That they speak up about it and they speak up non-anonymously. The other thing about anonymous anything, complaints or reporting retaliation, the issue is that whoever we are then questioning about the retaliation, whether it's the complainant, whether it's the respondent, whether it's an IC member, they have the right to ask who told you this. And then they can't really say, oh, it's anonymous and it just came from thin air. So that is something we always have to keep in mind. Any kind of reporting ideally should be named and shouldn't be anonymous. And the second part of this is I have rarely seen in the PoSH context retaliation complaints being made anonymously. There are whistleblower complaints about workplace harassment. Those are a separate realm. They're not part of the PoSH Act. Many organizations have those kind of policies. They have anonymous reporting mechanisms also. But PoSH related, I've rarely seen anything like this.
so I just want to add to that. In one organization, they had a complaint box, and there was a anonymous complaint put in that box about the retaliation, the intimidation that was done, and the screenshot of the WhatsApp message that was sent was taken and posted over there. Now, as an internal committee, since it was an anonymous complaint, first of all, it reached the employer and it was then given to us. So we took cognizance of that, and we did ask the person, did you receive such a complaint and is that affecting you? Or are you worried because of this? And that is when the person informed us that there were constant calls that were being made, and she had shared this with her friend, and maybe it is that friend who's dropped this complaint anonymous, to ensure that she feels more confident. So this has also happened, wherein the friend tried to be a support system to the complainant and bring it to the knowledge of the internal committee without being known. So I think it will depend from case to case to understand, how retaliation is something that can be dealt with by the internal committee. So
Right. Um, the question was also because, anonymity kind of gives you a veil of safety. And PoSH complaints, however, cannot be anonymous. We do need the name of the person, but also ensuring that, like, if somebody is coming forward, so it is well within the right of a person to come forward and state that I am, for example, I say that I am Meenakshi. I have seen so and so things happening in my company directly to the IC, and then say that, can you please not name me to the parties? And anonymity can be also achieved through that reassurance from the IC. Even though I do not have to be anonymous, but I don't want to be known as the whistleblower or like the person who has brought forward the issue. So sometimes anonymity post the complaining, or like even witnesses can choose to remain anonymous. That is a right of a witness. Even within the POSH Act, you can't force somebody ki you have to put your name out. So we can hide the highlighting factors of their identity and choose to take in the witness testimony into the report as well. So I think that is also one way to bring in some sort of anonymity, adding to what you both also mentioned. I guess you covered to that extent as well. Um so that being said, Madhavi, you had a doubt. So do you want to go ahead and ask that right now before I go and
Yeah.
ask the next question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't mind. So there was a point mentioned by Aileen saying that people opt for conciliation so that retaliation can be avoided. Did I get that point right? So how is it that
Yes.
conciliation can avoid retaliation? Even in the process of conciliation, the parties to the complaint are out. All those information is out. So retaliation could still happen. And the respondent could take it as a matter of vengeance that there has been a complaint in the first place, and even that is not tolerable by me, that kind of a thing.
So in one particular case that I handled, there was this person who was a class 4 employee, and she filed a complaint against the HR manager. Now, the lady did not want to initiate the complaint, and her fear was that her family would not support her during this process, and she would be blamed for having, attracted attention, or maybe just got along with him or spoke to him, or just been around with him. And it took a lot of convincing for other friends of hers to initiate this complaint. And then the lady came in with the complaint, and her immediate reaction was, ma'am, agar wo manne ko taiyar hai, if he's ready to acknowledge that what he did is wrong, and he's ready to apologize to me, I do not want to pursue this complaint further, because then everybody in the organization will be talking about it. So this was one of the first cases where the lady opted for conciliation. She opted for a settlement, did not want to pursue the matter, because she feared that it would affect her career and her job, her status in that organization, if everyone later on got to know that there was a complaint that she made. So she did not want to pursue the complaint ahead. There was another instance where, because of fear of retaliation, there were pornographic images shared by one colleague with the other colleague. And the colleague did it as a matter of fact. And he said, I enjoyed this, so I'm sharing it with you, and I hope you enjoy it as well. And then there was these few statements that were made towards the end. And the person came in, and the complaint came before the internal committee. And at that point in time, we asked her, what do you want to do about it? So she said, ma'am, I just want him to apologize for sending these pornographic images to me, and if that is done, I do not want to pursue the complaint ahead. Now, in this particular instance again, when we considered the fear that this lady had, because she expected certain amount of backlash at the organization, and there were other things that were there, and so because of that, she was okay to finish it off with conciliation. So this is what I meant, that if a person has some fear or feels intimidated by the senior for various reasons, they are okay with just an apology coming in. हाँ, उन्होंने मान लिया, they have accepted it, that is fine. I do not want to get into the crux of this issue, or I do not want any further adverse recommendations made against that person. So this is the context in which I answered that.
Right.
Thank you, Aileen.
Thank you so much, Aileen, on that clarification. I hope it helps Madhvi. I wanted to bring light to one very important question before we run out of time for today's discussion. Also requesting if people would be able to stay back for 15 more minutes, that would be really helpful, only if possible. But does retaliation by way of So there is a lot of naming and shaming culture and cancel culture that has grown over the years. I know that all these movements have also started as rights based with a rights based approach, but they have also gone a little bit out of hand sometimes when there was a lot of defamation happening through those, or even the cancel culture with which we say that okay, this person needs to go, but where will they go? They are still going to live in this same world. So how are we looking at the rehabilitation element of such instances? Maybe sometimes there are also posh cases where the respondent didn't even intend to cause any harm, but the impact matters, and they have caused some kind of harm because the victim has felt so, and they come from maybe different cultural backgrounds or different kinds of understandings. So how do we look at the rehabilitation element of things? And because this is also a form of retaliation that respondents face in a posh complaint, wherein they are already villainized and to the utmost levels. So how do we bring about the ability for people to accept their mistakes and change themselves? And how do we bring that dialogue in? And how do we talk about retaliation in that sense? So if any of you would like to answer, Vasundhara maybe.
So, Meenakshi, usually it does happen that, again, we've broken it down that it could be pre-inquiry, it could be during inquiry, it could be post-inquiry. So both of these, whatever naming, shaming that I have seen have been during the during and post stages. So during inquiry, also respondents have come and said, there are whispers about me in the office, and I'm being looked at by so many people as this, like you said, like a villain, like a perpetrator. So one thing is to incorporate this into employee awareness sessions. Firstly, like you had said in the beginning, that, not sort of turning a sexual harassment, the word itself, turning it into this big sort of criminal, very demonic act. Instead of that, sort of giving employees this understanding that it's a grievance that's being raised by somebody who's feeling unsafe, sort of bringing it down a notch. That is one thing that I have seen it work in corporate entity. And the second thing is post, if there is anything, post the inquiry, because I think often parties do wait till the proceedings are closed and then they say, now that the confidentiality is sort of not going to be watched by the IC members, I have the freedom to do whatever I want. So we have seen a case like that where after the inquiry, the complainant was unhappy with the outcome. And it was this sort of a case where again, an admission was made by the respondent, but he stated that, it was unintentional. I didn't mean to do this. Even after the inquiry was closed, there were discussions about the case. And the respondent was sort of being seen as this person because of the admission. That, he seems to normalize it. And again, that's where this shaming culture comes in. And a lot of team members were sort of alienating and isolating him. So I think awareness about that also has to be sort of spread in the employees, that how does isolation impact a person? How can it make them feel? And rehabilitative aspects, that after a person has been tried for a crime, how many times do you keep, trying them for it? Where does it stop? So all of these, I think, conversations have to be had in organizations on priority, especially the IC members notice this either during or post inquiry. They should definitely consider incorporating that into the awareness sessions. I think, again, especially with Gen Z, the emotions are often quite strong. They are informed by so much social media, conversation. So sort of maybe intertwining those and saying, this is a workplace safety conversation, maybe generally talking about how other aspects also, like taking offense to certain things, how can all of this be approached in a more conversational manner, in a more civil manner, instead of, getting up to level 10 with anger and keeping it at level 1 with, sort of conversation.
Yeah.
I think just to add to what
This is
Vasundhara said, I think the conditioning that we all come with within our families, we are all conditioned to, and we carry the same conditioning to our workspaces. So one of the initial aspect that employers can work with is, at the workspace, you are a professional, irrespective of male, female, and the conditioning or the patriarchal setup that you come with should be left at, the doors of this office. And that has helped. So in one particular case, a lady from Indore came to Bombay, and in their work culture, they used to hug each other to say a hello. And she found it very intimidating. She did not like to do it. She raised a complaint. And thereafter, nobody in the organization even wanted to be around her. So, when such instances come in, it is a preconceived notion, it's a conditioning that we've seen within the family that we are, bringing to our workspace. So, I believe that what organizations can do is like what Vasundhara said, discuss, talk about these different cultures that are there and try to bring about a office culture that is acceptable to all, which is safe. And there again, there is a stigma attached when a person complains. So, how the organization has dealt with the initial complaints will, pave the way for how further cases will be redressed, and whether the people will come ahead to complain will depend on all the prior commitments made by the organization. So I believe personally, Bollywood also I think has a very important role to play. So if we can keep Bollywood out of our offices, I think to a larger extent, we are not demonizing the different aspects relating to it. Like Munni Badnaam Hui is not a song to be played in the office setup, but then there have been cases of sexual harassment linked to the song being played at a cultural program. So I believe that organizations have a very important role to play to create a empathetic situation to cases of sexual harassment.
right. And
I
sorry,
want
go
to add
ahead.
on to that, Eileen. Organizations and the role they have to play also, I think I want to tie in Sakshi's question. A lot of global organizations have a general anti-retaliatory policy. And that is made, clear to the employees right from the start. So whether it's a manager retaliating against a junior who has given any kind of feedback, irrespective of gender, that sort of anti-retaliatory policy being pan organization can then trickle into PoSH also, Sakshi. So the usual step is to have that sort of a policy in place. Legally, I am not sure if there's any provision under employment law that talks about retaliation, but then again, like I said, there may be other wording of any particular labor law which could be applicable. But legal aspects, I think the best way and the most common feature that I've seen across organizations is having an anti-retaliatory policy that's general. In one of the cases that recently I had, the IC members were taking up a case which was against somebody rather senior, and they had family members who were reporting to him. So one of the IC members had a son working in the same company, and her son used to report to the respondent. So when she was giving this recommendation against him, and it was fairly serious, both the act that he had committed as well as the recommendation fairly serious. So she had a fear that what if he retaliates against my son in some way? So that could be a sort of convoluted retaliation that happens. Even in that case, the company CEO had a conversation with the IC saying, look, as an employer, we have an anti-retaliatory policy and we take it very seriously. So we will make sure that if anything happens, please request your son to report it to us, speak up about it, and we will ensure that action is taken accordingly. So, Sakshi, I hope that also answers your question, but just wanted to add to what Aileen was talking about, the organization and the employer's responsibility.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, thank you for that as well, Vasundhara and Aileen. I think it also stayed with me when you said that don't bring home culture to office culture and create an office culture. And also one more thing is that, like, people often miss out the element of consent. Like, okay, I may be open enough to hug people, but maybe I'm not open enough just yet because not everyone comes from the same upbringing. Maybe I'm open to hug one person, but I'm not open to hug the other person. So it's not like calling somebody a prude for not wanting to participate in the office, like, equally. Also shows a deep insensitivity on the behalf of employees in such situations, right? Like, it really stayed with me because as a person, like, sometimes people also establish that consent in a very jovial manner, that are you a hugger? Are we huggers? Like, there are these languages which are there which allow you to not make it very serious, but at the same time just check in with the person before, like, going and hugging them or doing something. It's also very important, I feel. So this also brings me to this question that what do you think that are the major steps that companies should take to avoid retaliation at workplace? And what role does leadership play in preventing such retaliation and also to ensure like a fair redressal process? I know you covered some of it by saying that one needs to have an anti-retaliation policy, but also to talk about like definitely HR policies, grievance redressal policies. I agree to that those will really help in creating like a guideline and a document. But what is it that even leadership plays as a role for such anti-retaliation in a workplace? Aileen, if you would like to take it up.
I will just build on what I shared earlier about the role of, the employees, the leadership. I think it's very important for every organization to have a policy in place. So, like we have the sexual harassment, anti-sexual harassment policy in place. In a similar way, the HR policy also talks about certain human behavior or human interaction at the workspace. For employees to understand that this is a workspace and this comes with its own rules and regulations, I think is something that needs to be reinforced time and again. With the work culture getting more informal and now with work from home coming in, I think we have, the boundaries or the timelines have become very blink, and people tend to forget that there is a difference between personal, professional, or office and home. And so now I think it's important for companies to kind of ensure that boundaries are, respected, and boundaries are respected to the extent that the employee will not face any negative, marking or any negative feedback for having maintained boundaries. I think the second aspect that companies need to reinforce is consent. And I think consent is something that is very important, not only in a relationship that is there within the organization, but also consent to whether I agree to a certain culture that is there in my office, and whether I am, willing to abide by that or submit to that. I think that is something that I, as an individual, should decide. So a lot of offices today have young people who decide certain rules which may not really be okay for everyone, and I think that important aspect of consent is very important. And I think the third thing that I can really think about is that the leadership plays a very important role in supporting any voice that is raised against sexual harassment. So, discussing what is sexual harassment, I think, is something that is very important for every organization, because unwelcome is the key. So, what is welcome for me or what is unwelcome for me may not be unwelcome for you. And if I find it unwelcome, my voice against it has to be respected rather than, shunning me or trying to cool off the situation. And if that acknowledgement of my unwelcome, act being reported is taken in, I'm sure there'll be many others who would want to do it, report against it, or create a safe space for everyone. So I believe personally, when we talk about sexual harassment at workplace, it is more individual related. So it is a perception, or it is something that depends on how I perceive things. So if something is unwelcome for me, it may not be unwelcome for everyone else, but yet I have the right and the duty to complain against it, which should be respected. I think officers should create this kind of a safe space, and they should take cognizance of such complaints that come in. They should follow recommendations more seriously, and create a preventive environment, or create an environment that prevents any sort of further retaliation, and specifically in cases of sexual harassment. See, retaliation also happens between colleague conflict, or retaliation also happens in other aspects. So depending on how that is dealt with, a survivor of sexual harassment would feel more encouraged to report about it.
Agreed. Yeah. Vasundhara, would you like to add to that anything? I
I'm
feel
good.
like
Thank
Aileen has thoroughly covered
you. Yes, all of it.
almost all of it. So thank you so much for so much insight today. I have personally learned a lot, and I think that overall, we can definitely take away from that like, retaliation is not just like the headache of IC, or like, um one party or the HR. It is actually something that has to be taken into consideration by each and every party. And also, just to importantly tell that, like, sometimes we couldn't cover it today in this session, but something that was also there, that sometimes even IC members can be very harsh, so they can also retaliate. So it's like, oh, why didn't you complain before? Like, I get it that the complainant might have taken some time to consider and come, or like, yelling at the respondent. So such things also should not happen. I feel like, however important it is to have that power to get your statements out of people and be a neutral party, one needs to remember that they have to be a neutral party. So if there are any IC members also in the group, it's also important to note that down, that like, you are still a neutral party, and you need to make sure that you are also not. One case that even I was handling, I had a, what do you call, there was an IC member who went and told the respondent about the things, and that IC member was further then dismissed from the case. So it was also very interesting to see that, like, a person who has been chosen to be an IC member is retaliating against the complainant. So these things also happen. So it's not like anyone is exempt from such behavior just because they are in positions of power. I think everyone is equally responsible for such situations, and uh, definitely needs to be taken into consideration. Are there any? I think we tried to address as many questions as possible in the chat. If there are any further questions, please do reach out to us, because I think for the brevity of time, we are at the end of our session today. But if there are any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, because we also resolve such queries on our chat box. We are always available for such things. So please do reach out to us on this. And I think thank you for really staying throughout the session, and taking us in the understanding us, and being there with us and asking so many insightful questions. I think some of them we couldn't address today. Sorry about that, but we would like to address them. Please reach out to us personally. And also would like to bring in our next ILA topic. Next ILA and Kelp webinar topic is sexual harassment in media and hospitality. It is going to be again a very fun session, because I think that this topic comes from our hearts, and it is a very unorganized sector, and I feel like it also needs to be brought into consideration. And there is a registration link that has been put by us in the chat box. So please register for it, and see you, I guess, next month with the same webinar. So, and also, if you've missed out on any part of the webinar, this is available on YouTube, and our previous webinars are all also available on YouTube. So please go check them out, and if there are any kind of interesting insights, please do share with us. Thank you so much, Vasundhara and Aileen from the from all of my heart and Kelp's heart that you came here and spoke with us today. And yeah, I think this is going to be one of my favorite ILAs because it's really fun webinar that we've had. Also insightful, but fun. Yes.
Thank you. Just wanted to touch on what Kritika has mentioned, that the language of Rule 12 says subject to 17. I understand that it can be applied to people beyond 17 also. So I do understand any person entrusted with the duty to handle or deal with the complaint applies to employer or IC. But when we look at the rules do say that subject to the provisions of section 17 if any person contravenes the provisions of 16. So I understand that it can be applied to employees who are participating in the inquiry also, but Kritika, feel free to share your thoughts further. Thank you so much, Aileen, for helping me learn also. I think Meenakshi's thoughts are resonated by me. I learned so much today. And thank you everybody who participated and for your wonderful questions. This was a great pleasure.
I had one small
Thank-
question, Meenakshi. When you say that report need not include the name of witnesses in case they are concerned about it, only the testimony can go. Does that work that way always?
It can be done as a practice in case there is a threat to the witness to provide their testimony. You can redact the names or name of the witness and identifying factors, but keep their statement intact. Because
So the
you-
employer is, the employer cannot compel the IC members to disclose the name, right? IC can take that call. It is at the discretion of the IC. In case the witness has expressed a concern, then IC is the final authority
Yes.
to take a call of
I see
redacting the
take a
name.
call here. I don't think
Oh.
the employer takes a call in this
Can
situation.
compel and ask the information. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Also, witness has a right not to testify. So this is something that we have used in cases wherein the witness is very unwilling to testify and they're feeling very scared. So we are like, okay, we'll redact your name and please testify because it is important for us to gain that information
Get to the
shared,
roots of
because
the case.
then they can just be like, okay, I don't want to testify only. Like, that can also happen as a response. So instead of no testification, testimony with like redacted name, because we know that a person has come and said something and we are just redacting the name for their safety.
So we are only taking the input to get to the roots of the problem, but we are not including or highlighting the name.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
so-
you both of you, Aileen and Vasundhara, for all the
Thank you.
inputs.
Just a small thing in the extension of the same question. Now, since you said that it is redacted from the report or maybe from the employer or the management, but both the parties would know about it, assuming the complainant and the respondent would know about the witness and the test. I mean,
So
testimony.
sometimes they do face a threat from the respondent, which is why they don't want to come and share. So that is also something that we consider, because
Isn't it the right of the respondent to know about who's
we give
testimony?
the entire information of what the witness testimony stated. But sometimes it's only in the matters. It is definitely the right. So we do provide a list of witnesses, but it's only in very extreme situations where there is a real threat to safety for the witness and they wouldn't want to disclose their name. But we do provide all the information to the respondent that this is the testimony that we have received in case they want to provide their defense on that particular testimony as well. So definitely that is also taken into consideration. I hope that helps.
All said and done.
Okay.
Thank you. But we can
Thank you.
definitely take this conversation forward if required. So please
Sure.
send in a query and we can discuss it there.
Thank you so much.
I think today's session time is
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, all right. No, because generally, Meenakshi, such topics, if you are limiting it to 1 hour, we have expressed this earlier also. 20 minutes goes away in opening it and concluding it. So at least we need 15-20 minutes more to have such topics, because there are certainly some genuine questions which have not yet been answered, but that's fine. We are sharing good information and knowledge. And thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Madhvi. I think I will take it as a good thing that you would want more of our webinar. And I think I would really, I was also thinking that, like, 1 hour is not enough. So we will take that feedback very seriously. Once again, thank you, Vasundhara and Aileen, also for extending your space and time towards us. And also all the participants were asking such wonderful questions that the session is going on and on. So thank you so much, Madhavi and Amit as well. Yeah. Aileen, do you want to say your goodbye parting words because
Yes.
you've not gotten the
Thank
space?
you. Yeah. Thank you, Meenakshi, for anchoring it, or being our anchor throughout. I think the joy that you brought, your smiling face has, taken a lot of stress away from us. And thank you, Vasundhara. It was nice sharing space with you. Uh, like we all believe that when we handle cases of sexual harassment at workplace, they come with their own ifs and buts, and we cannot make general statements. So whatever we've shared today is based on our experience, and it would always be customized, our inquiry processes based on cases. So thank you very much for allowing me to share certain insights that I've received in my practice, and I look forward to many more sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you so much.